Good evening, everybody. Good evening. We're getting ready for Math and Torah. The greatest event in history. Obviously, would make the best kind of meat. What's the best kind of meat? Anybody here know what the nicest meat is? One Beta says.
Tongue?
I don't know. I always thought so. The one Beta says the best kind of meat is cow, which is either 3 years old, or it's the third one born from the mother. You have to go to the butchers and ask them for the most expensive meat and order it for Yom Tov, one Beta. And even if in all other Yom Tovim you're allowed to spend the entire day learning and davening, should you wish to do so, in the Yom Tov of Shabbos you're not allowed to do that. In Yom Tov of Shabbos you cannot spend your entire day davening and learning. You have to make sure to have a good meal. That on Shabbos you also have to have lochem. So this Shavuos, you can't just spend the entire day learning. You also have to have a proper meal. I said to my children, they don't like meat. I mean, some of them do, but most don't. But they have to think of the most exciting kind of nash they can think of, and I'll buy it for them. So they've been having a discussion at great length. What is the nicest kind of nash? What's your best food, Ben? What's your best food? You have to order it for him for Shavuos.
Can't be it.
Sweets and steak.
Sweets and steak. Oh yeah, steak.
Not together. Steak and sweets, my two favorite things.
Tell you what you ordering for Shavuos. You have to order in something the best food possible. It's a mitzvah. It is.
Get a nice whiskey in.
Whiskey.
Get a nice whiskey
All
to
that
go with the meat. A nice meat, a steak or a tongue or something.
It's a chiv. Oh, you can ask Ben. Your son's right behind you. Ask him. What's your son's name? What's your best nash?
Gadi.
What's your favorite nash? What's your favorite nash? You have to ask him.
Biscuits.
Biscuits. You're getting away cheap, Ben.
Ben, seriously?
I buy a packet of Jack and Jill's.
Yes. Oh, come on. You can't do that. That's for sure.
Saying we should buy you your best nash for Shavuos.
You have to. Tell your father it's a chiv. It's a gemon beitza. Obviously did it, so he should also. Bisley. Come on. Bisley is much nicer than biscuits. It's very important. People think Shavuos.
You like biscuits? Oh.
Whiskey. Oh yeah, what did he say? What's his favorite nash?
No, he likes brisket as well.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
A bit of biscuit and a bit of biscuit.
Right.
A good lotus cheesecake.
Right. Okay. We're starting. It's a very important point, though. A person does have to celebrate Shavuos. Shavuos is about feeling joy that we got the Torah. It's not so easy. Some people, the person has to spend a few days thinking, why is it joyful? But unless you celebrate it, you have to ask your children, what's exciting? Unfortunately, I tell you, it's a big struggle nowadays. The children get so much nash. It is rare to find a nash that is actually exciting. But you do have to. That is a bechiyuv, to find something that's most exciting for yourself as well, and for your wife, and then to buy it. Well, up to Daf Ein Testament base, we're continuing with the topic which we've had for a few days, and that is to carry on Shabbos is always forbidden. But to be chayav chatos, that means to be chayav a korban, you have to carry something of value, something that can be used. If you carry a crumb, you're not chayav because you've not carried anything of value. And the Gemara continues with many different kinds of products, what things are considered of value and what are not considered of value. It's a challenging Gemara because we live in a day where none of these things are applicable. Most people don't go around carrying half the items here. And if they do, you don't carry a piece of leather to protect your weights, etc., or to get a receipt from the tax collector. So it is a challenge to relate to these Gemaras. What is actually very fascinating about these Gemaras is that, recycling, this is recycling like par excellence. This is recycling beyond anything that even Berry Council ever imagined. They would take, a piece of, like, I've got a grandmother, she'll be she's 96. If you give her a plastic bag, these ones which get like 1,000 plastic bags in this red contained packets, so she won't throw it out. She'll fold it up and try and find a use for it. In my house, we throw out perfectly good, usable paper and all kinds of things we throw out. You see from the Gemara that they really recycled. They never threw things away because the truth of the matter is they lived in a society where it's very, very hard to get hold of things. A drop of ink, if you could write with it 2 letters, that was considered a value. Right? You had inkwell in your desk. Nowadays, if a peanut butter jar is mostly empty, the children say, "Oh, I can't bother scraping it out. Let's get a new one." I think we can still get a few more bread out of there. But anyway. So these Gemaras is all about how you can use each item what the for. We learn a very, very, very lot about the way of life that they had in the olden days, which is also very important to know to get a picture of how Chazal lived. So with this small introduction, we're going to continue now with many different items and discussions. The next thing we're going to talk about is klaf. Klaf is parchment. There were 2 main kinds of parchment. There were many others, but the 2 main ones were called klaf and duchstus. The leather of a cow was cut down the middle. That means they peeled it apart. The actual leather, they would split it in half. And the outer one was called klaf, from the word klipper, a peel. And the inner one was called duchstus, from the idea of dus here, sust is flesh. So they would peel it down, and they would have 2 kinds of skin. And here, there's got pictures of it. Here, if you look at it very carefully, it's not so hard to imagine, but just a nice picture where they peel the actual skin. So one was called klaf, if you could see duchstus and klaf. The klaf, if you think about it, was the one that had the hair on, because the klaf was the outer one. The hair of a cow was on the outer, if you peel the skin outer. The inner one is the bit that had the flesh on. So the Gemara now discusses how much do you have to carry. Says the Gemara, Ein Tes on base, top of the page. Klaf, to write in it a small parsha, and we explained it's referring to the parsha of Shema, which is in the Tefillin Shalosh. If you ever saw it, we're talking about a piece of parchment approximately 2 centimeters, 1 centimeter by about 8 centimeters. A tiny piece of parchment. That's usually the size of writing Shema. 1 or 2 centimeters by 8 centimeters piece of parchment. Ominu, klaf, the duchstus, not to write Shema, but to write mezuzah. And if anybody knows Shema, the mezuzah has Shema v'ahavto and b'oyom shemoya. It says much longer. Answers the Gemara, my mezuzah shebet tefillin. The word mezuzah can also mean a scroll. So when we say mezuzah, we don't mean the mezuzah which we put in our doorpost, but we mean the scroll which is put inside the tefillin. Inside the tefillin, those little scrolls. They call it tefillin mezuzah. Did they call tefillin mezuzah? And yes, indeed. By the time we have a brayso which calls the scroll inside the tefillin, it calls it mezuzah. But so is tefillin that we had previously in the first parak, that kisvi hakodesh metamenes hayadayim, that anything which is holy is metame one's hands. If you touch the Sefer Torah, your hands are tomei, and you cannot touch truma. Does anybody remember why should touching a Sefer Torah make your hands tomei? Not easy to remember, but basically, in the olden days, they would store the Sefer Torah and the Truma in the same place, because they would think to themselves, Sefer Torah is Kaddish, Truma is Kaddish. And mice would come to eat the Truma, and at the same time, they would ruin the Sefer Torah. So they said that a Sefer Torah creates Truma. That way, they wouldn't store the Sefer Torah with the Truma together. Says the Gemara like this. If a person touches the straps of the tefillin with the tefillin, when they're with the tefillin, then the hands become tomei. If a person touches the straps while they're by themselves, that's the shit of the Tanakh. And the Gabu touching the strap of the tefillin doesn't make you tomei. Until you touch the actual box. The box itself of tefillin makes you tomei, but not the straps. A person is not tomei until he touches the scroll within the tefillin. We have 3 opinions. We just said the Sefer Torah makes you tomei, and that's why we don't touch the Sefer Torah with our hands. Besides that, the Sefer Torah creates tumah. There is a question regarding tefillin, and the Gemara brings 3 opinions. Either the straps make tumah, or the box of the tefillin make tumah, or only the scrolls within the box make tumah. But we see, nevertheless, it's not the main point. The main point we wanted to suggest is that the mezuzah, the scroll within the tefillin, is called mezuzah. So we see the word mezuzah does not only refer to the mezuzahs we put on our doorpost, but it also refers to the scrolls we put in our tefillin. So when the Mishnah says that you should put the size of a parchment to be chayav has to be the size of Shema, and the Brisa says the size of a mezuzah, it's not a contradiction. Because when we say mezuzah, we mean the scroll within the tefillin. The Gemara, when we take on the Sefer, the Brisa says in the end, that klaf has to be the size of writing tefillin, the small passion tefillin, shishma yisod. V'chad reish mezuzah atzmos kinon. Is right, the reish is talking about mezuzah, not tefillin, because it says at the end, but klaf is the size of shema. And it says, mochi ketani. This is what the Brisa means to say as follows. Klaf v'duchstus shum bekamo. What's the size? Duchstus. Each one, that's the size of a mezuzah, because that is not suitable for tefillin. It's only suitable for mezuzah. So indeed, it means literally a mezuzah. The mezuzah we put in our doorpost. So not like we read before that the Brisa says klaf and duchstus both are the size of a mezuzah. No, you're supposed to read like this: klaf and duchstus, each one separately. What's the size? Duchstus, which we said is the inner parchment, and that is only used for mezuzahs, and therefore it has to be the size of a mezuzah. And klaf, a piece of parchment, it has to be the size of Shema Yisrael. So klaf, which is more precious, is smaller than duchstus, which is less precious, and you have to have only the size of a mezuzah. Says the Gemara, Omar Rav, duchstus haike klaf. The way Tosfos explains, it's actually the bottom Tosfos later. The Rav came into the base of Medrash and just said the words, duchstus is the same as klaf, without explaining what he meant. That means, we just before explained that they used to peel the parchment into two, the front and the back, and there were differences in halacha. Came along Rav and said, no, that they are similar in halacha. And now the Gemara tries to explain Rav, that's how Tosfos explains. If you look at the bottom Tosfos, Ashras Zachi, Oimer bottom Tosfos. The Milsa the Rav Stomon Nishas Beis HaMedrash. He said it's stam. The klaf duchstus shavim. Klaf duchstus is the same. Or your sovel b'tchila. In the beginning, we thought it meant tefillin. Later, the was going to change his mind. Rav just said klaf and duchstus is the same. And now we're going to explain what did Rav mean. Ma klaf kesen of tefillin, af duchstus kesen of tefillin. Just like you're allowed to write klaf or allowed to write tefillin on klaf, you're allowed to write tefillin also on the duchstus, which is the inner membrane, the inner layer of the skin. Says the Gemara, is that true? Nan klaf ketelichtu parshak tanash v'tefillin shishma yisrael klaf and duchstus loy. You can be medayik from our Mishnah that only klaf has that measurement, but duchstus not. That duchstus you don't write tefillin, and since you don't write tefillin, it has a different measure. Not like Rav who said that you're allowed to write tefillin also on duchstus. Answers the Gemara, loy lemitzvah. That's only the mitzvah. That's referring to a mitzvah. Meaning, lechatchila you should write your tefillin on klaf. But the evid, it's okay on duchstus. Therefore, when the Mishnah tells us the measurements, the Mishnah does not tell us the same measurements for klaf and duchstus, because people do not carry things in order to do a b'di'evid thing. And therefore, when a person carries klaf, he could be intending to write it parashah ketana shebet tefillin, which is a Shema Yisrael. But by duchstus, since it's not lechatchila to use it for tefillin, so therefore, for that indeed, you need a bigger measurement to write even more. Toshima. Halacha leMoshe Sinai tefillin ala klaf umezuzah al duchstus. The halacha leMoshe Sinai, we were told by Moshe Rabbeinu when he came down from Har Sinai, that tefillin is on the klaf, which is the outer one, as we said, mezuzah al duchstus. Klaf mokim basar, duchstus mokim seor. That means, if you have to picture it a little bit, we just said you take a piece of leather and you peel it apart from each other. Each one has an inner and an outer. Regarding klaf, you have to write on the inner part of the outer skin. And duchstus, you have to write on the outer part of the inner skin. Here's the piece of leather, which you stripped from a cow. Can you see the piece of leather? So klaf is the outer one where the hair is. You have to write on the inner part of the klaf. That means you can't write on the outer part where the hair is. You have to write on the inner part of the klaf. Duchstus is the inner part of the skin, because that's the part which touches the flesh, and you have to write in the outer part. If you imagine a thick piece of leather coming off a hide of a cow, and you peel it, and it's got two pieces now. So regarding klaf, you have to use let's see it inside again. Klaf b'mokim basar. Klaf, you have to write where the flesh would have been, meaning the inner side, not the hair. Duchstus mokim seil. The duchstus, which is the inner, you have to write on it on the outer part where the hair would normally be. We see clearly not like Rav. Rav told us you can write tefillin and you can write tefillin either on klaf or on duchstus, and this price tells us no. Duchstus is used for mezuzah and klaf for tefillin. As more the mitzvah, it's just lechatchila. But tiny the price says shinna. If you change it, possible that it's possible. And says the Gemara mezuzah. It's only referring to mezuzah. It says if you change in either one, it is possible. And says more idim idim mezuzah. Both cases is referring to mezuzah. Changing either one refers to mezuzahs. That means if you write the klaf in the inner in the outer one or the duchstus in the inner one, then either one by mezuzah it is possible. But to write tefillin on duchstus, that is still kosher, just like Rab said that klaf and duchstus is the same. It's machliks the Tanoi, and Rab is going like the other man Doma. The Tanya shinu bezel bezel possible. So far, let's explain what we've learned. Rav said klaf and duchstus is the same. The Gemara explains Rav is referring to tefillin. They're allowed to write tefillin both on klaf and on duchstus. The Gemara brings a brayso that says no, that tefillin is written on klaf and zuz on duchstus. The Gemara says that's only lechatchila. Asks the Gemara, the brayso clearly says that if you change either one, it is possible. And the Gemara gives two answers to that question. Either that when the Vice says either change is no good, it's referring to a mezuzah which is done in the wrong place. Either it's done in the outer klaf or the inner duchstus, or indeed this Vice is not like Rav, but it's not a kasha on Rav, because Rav holds like a different Tanam. Rav holds like a different Brisa. The Tadad Be Menashe, Kosval and if you write something, we're going to discuss later what exactly you wrote. Let's say tefillin, mezuzah, or sefer Torah. But let's say you wrote on a piece of paper, bala matlis, on a piece of cloth, psula it is possible. Ala klaf, if you write it on parchment, bala gvil, or on the parchment which has been worked with, bala duchstus, or the inner parchment, gesher it is kosher. What are we talking about? You're never allowed to have mezuzah on klaf. So therefore, obviously, we're not talking about mezuzah in that price. Tefillin must be talking about tefillin, and there's a right that tefillin can be written on klaf and duchstus. So whoever write tefillin on parchment which has been worked on, and that bias is talking about the sefer Torah, and therefore you've got no right to Rab from there, because that bias is not talking about not by tefillin, not by mezuzah, it's only talking about sefer Torah. There's a very famous story. Pesach once said that a girl once came to a Rav with a mezuzah, and she said to him, I want you to check for me if it's kosher. He opens up the mezuzah, and out falls a post-it note with the words Shema Yisrael and V'ahavta written. And he gets all worked up, thinks to himself, which sefer cheated this family that charged him so much money? And he asks the girl if he wants to try it. He's all annoyed. He says, where do you get this mezuzah from? Basically, the story was that she had heard a shiur about the chashivas of mezuzah, and she had just thought that she could just write it out herself on a piece of paper, and that way it would be kosher. And she wasn't cheated by anybody. He was impressed, indeed, that she made such an effort when she heard the mitzvah of mezuzah. She wanted to have mezuzah in her home. She came from a non-from family, and she wanted to somehow that her parents should have mezuzah. Now, there are many things wrong with that mezuzah. Mezuzah written by a girl is possible. But besides that, from this price we learn that mezuzah written on a piece of paper is also possible. So therefore, you can't write a sefer Torah tefillin or mezuzah on a piece of paper. Leave Messiah. Let's bring a riot to Rab that you're allowed to write tefillin on tuchstus. Kayotzebui. This is a Mishnah in what's the word from the Megillah, Menachos, where the idea is that you're not allowed to take something which has got a chamur kedusha to light a kedusha. You're not allowed to, for example, use the straps from the tefillin shel rosh and put them on the tefillin shel yad, because the tefillin shel rosh has more kedusha. So you're malin b'kodesh, but ein moridin. You always go up, you never go down. It's not fair. It's not sensitive. It's not kind to the tefillin to go to a lower level. So the vice is like this: tefillin shabalu, tefillin that got worn out, the sefer Torah shabala, or a sefer Torah that got worn out in oisin and mezuzah. You can't make out of a mezuzah. That means you can't use the parchment from a tefillin which wore out and add it to your mezuzah, or from a sefer Torah into mezuzah. You can't go from a higher kedusha to a lower kedusha, and the Sefer Torah and the Tefillin are both more Kodesh than the mezuzah. Tosis discusses how exactly is it practical, because the mezuzah has to have two parashas, V'ahavta and V'yom. So what exactly happened? You got a Sefer Torah that got worn out. So what are you going to do? Tosis explains that you'll cut out a piece, add it to another piece. It doesn't mean the whole thing. Or Tosis says that maybe we're talking about where you'll use a whole big piece, which will have both Shema, V'yom, and Shema. But that's the practical technicalities Tosis discusses. But the halacha is you're not allowed to go from a kedusha chamur to kedusha kala, from a high kedusha to a low kedusha. So if we're not allowed to use a sefer Torah and a tefillin for mezuzah, that means if you've got a sefer Torah and a tefillin which got worn out, don't use it for your mezuzah. Now, if the halacha is that they cannot be written on the same kind of parchment, then the question is not important. It's a ridiculous. The scenario can never happen. If a mezuzah cannot be written on the same kind of parchment that the tefillin can, then the question doesn't start, because that one is written on that kind of parchment, mezuzah is written on a different kind of parchment. The very fact that it says you can't change a tefillin to mezuzah because it's kedusha chamur, kedusha kala, from a high kedusha to a lower kedusha, teaches us that in theory they couldn't be the same kind of parchment. Only you don't change it because it isn't right. Says the Gemara, what did you write this on? Lav dechsiva aduchstus. It must have been written on duchstus, because that's the only thing which works both for tefillin and for mezuzah. And it's a raya like Rav that you can write tefillin on duchstus, because if you can't, and tefillin can only be written on klaf, and mezuzah can only be written on duchstus, so then the question will never start. How can you ever talk about just transferring a tefillin to mezuzah? Tefillin is always written on one kind of material, and mezuzah for something else. Look, it's written on the klaf. Mezuzah klaf because we don't do ever write mezuzah on klaf. Moses and or Tanya learned in the Brayse, Kosra la klaf al niyav al amatlis psulo. If you write on a cloth, on a parchment, on the niyav paper, or on a cloth, it is parcel. The mayor would write mezuzah on a cloth. So you see that you can write mezuzah on a cloth because it stays for longer. There are three explanations in the Rishonim what stays longer. One pshat is that cloth lasts longer than duchstus. Another explanation is that the ink on klaf is more permanent than the ink on duchstus, because the duchstus is more fleshy. The third explanation is the meiri, that you have to roll the mezuzah very tight, and duchstus being thicker will not be rolled up so well. Hashados is lachi. Now that we come to this, the Rav Nami duchstus al klaf. Don't say that Rav meant that duchstus is the same as klaf regarding tefillin. And the klaf al duchstus. Klaf is like duchstus. Now duchstus goes on mezuzah. Just like you're allowed to write a mezuzah on duchstus, af klaf kis mezuzah. Rav just said klaf and duchstus is the same. Originally, we said that Rav meant to tell us that you're allowed to write tefillin on duchstus. Now the Gemara says, no, what Rav meant to tell us is that you're allowed to write mezuzah on klaf. And that's a chiddush. And he holds like the second Tana of this price, so says that you're allowed to write mezuzah on klaf, and not like the first Tana that doesn't. Nowadays, we don't use either klaf or duchstus. We use a different kind of parchment together, which has been scraped. And we've got extremely sophisticated machinery to get the best kind of leather, which is very typical ideas. But yeah, the person needs to know these halachas in the case when it doesn't have the normal klaf, what klaf you should use. Okay, next topic. Till now we talk about parchment. Now we're talking about ink. In order to be chayiv on Shabbos, you have to carry ink. How much ink? Says the Gemara, bottom of the Ayin Testament race, the Yokadei Lichtov, top of Pei Amud Aleph, Tana, Shtei Oisios, B'Diyoy. Either 2 letters of ink. Means if you carry a drop of ink enough to write 2 letters, or if you've got a quill, and on the quill there's enough ink to write 2 letters, or enough ink in an inkwell to write 2 letters, a person is chayav. So if you carry an inkwell, or a quill, or a drop of ink, and in any of these 3 things there's enough to write 2 letters, one is chayav. So you ask me the question, why do you need to be chayav because of the ink? If you've got an inkwell, which is like a small container, so you should be chayav because of the container, even if it's only got, let's say, get a container which only has enough to write 1 letter. There's such a little bit of ink, it's only enough to write 1 letter. I still remember when I learned in Jewish day, every desk had a place to keep your inkwell inside.
Pashba desks still have them, some of them, the old ones.
My father told me he wrote with the inkwell. He used to write with the inkwell. So this is before the days of the Maverick, when people didn't have ballpoint pens. The point is like this. And the obvious question, if you carry an inkwell, and it's only got enough ink to write one letter inside it, or you have a potter, what's the din? What's the din? If you carry an inkwell which has only got enough to write one letter, what's the din?
Potter velosa.
Potter velosa, very good, you're potter. Why? Because it's only got enough to write one letter. One letter is not important. I ask you. But you should be chayav because of the inkwell. The inkwell is a container. What's the answer?
It's bottled to the ink it's carrying.
Oh, very good.
You said
Because when you carry the inkwell with a bit of ink inside, why are you carrying the inkwell? Because of the ink. And the ink is not significant. It's like carrying a plate with a crumb of bread inside it. Where you're not chayav because you're only carrying it for the crumb of bread. The crumb of bread is not chayav. Rav asks the following question. What happens if you take an inkwell which only has enough ink for one letter, plus a quill which only has enough ink for one letter, and you take the two things together? That means you take the inkwell plus the quill, and each one only has enough to write one letter. Do we say, well, you've taken enough ink for two letters? Or do we say, no, each particular item that you have taken is useless because it can only write one letter? So therefore you're not chayav. Teiku, says the Gemara, it's teiku, with the Gemara leaves it standing. Omar Rabba, if a person carries enough ink to write two letters, and you go outside in the street and you go onto the M62 and you write the letters down on the motorway. While you're walking, as we had in the first parak, in order to be chayav on Shabbos, you have to do a kira and a hanocha. So you uprooted from Rishus HaYochid some ink, and you did the hanocha and the Rishus HaRabim. You did quite an unusual hanocha. You didn't put the ink down on the floor. You wrote with the ink. Says Rava, that's enough to be chayav. Why? Because writing on the floor, that's a form of hanocha. It's a form of rest.
There's two malachas is done. Ketziva
Yes.
and Hitzah.
Very good. Very good. Who said that?
Yehuda.
Oh, very good point. Yes. If your person was to do that, it would be chayav too. The Rishonim asks, so why is Rava coming to tell us? So they give different answers. Be right, either it would be chayav too, or let's say in the case where he wasn't chayav, so it saw, just where he wasn't chayav as ksiva, just so it saw. You're right, we're done too. Very good. Person carries enough ink just to write one letter. Is he chayav yet? No, one letter is not important. The kosva, he wrote it down. Potter. Why is he potter? Oh, you took out two letters. You wrote one, then you took out the next one, you wrote the next one. When you write with ink, ink dries up very, very quickly and it shrinks. So the amount of ink you need to write two letters is more than the amount of ink of two letters that have already been written because ink shrinks. So when you
what letter is it? One letter? Is it a specific letter or any letter?
Any letter. We're talking about tiny amounts of ink. I don't know how you can.
Is it two separate saws?
We're talking about here. We did two separate saws. Yes, very
Then
good.
why should they add up?
No, two separate saws do add up. Two separate saws normally. If you take half an apple.
But then it's still two separate ksivas though.
So what? For 2 hours, saw does add up. Let's say the shiur on Shabbos to be chayav is a whole apple. Let's say, and you take out half an apple, and 5 minutes later take out another half an apple. If in between you remembered it as Shabbos, you're not chayav because it's not considered one forgetfulness. But if you didn't remember in between, and it was all in one forgetfulness of Shabbos, then you're chayav chatos. Because at the end of the day, in one forgetfulness of Shabbos, you took out an entire fruit, which is valuable. So if you took out one letter and then another letter, you'd be chayav. The Rava here says you're not chayav. Why? Because when you wrote the first letter, after you went back in to get the second letter of ink, the first letter started shrinking because it dries up. So now you have less ink than two letters. Less ink than two letters, therefore you're potter. So therefore you're only chayav if you take out one ink of letter, don't write it, and then you go with another letter of ink and take it out. If you write it, the actual writing makes things shrink and get less, and now you don't chayav anymore.
Is it still chayav for ksiva?
I didn't catch that, sorry?
Is it still chayav for ksiva?
Let's say the second time he never actually wrote. He doesn't say he wrote the second time. The first time he wrote, the second time he just took it out. So we're not necessarily did he do ksiva either, because for ksiva as well, you have to do two letters. Since Rava mentioned taking out ink, he starts to add a little bit more about other things. A person took out half a fig. How much you need to take on Shabbos to be chayav of food is a whole fig. So he took out the whole fig, half a fig. Achas. V'inicho, he put it down. And then he took out another half a fig and he put it down. The first one as if a dog took it or burnt and he's potter. It's still there. Why is he potter? If I take out, let's say my house is on the side of a Rishus Rabim. I live that house, if you remember, on the M62. You're only chayav from Rishus Yochid to Rishus Rabim. So imagine this person lives next to M62, takes out half a fig, puts it down on M62. Is he chayav? No. He only did half a shiur. He goes back into his house, he takes out another half a fig, puts it down. He would be chayav. Why? Because now he's done an entire shiur with one forgetfulness. If he remembered in between, not. But here he didn't, so therefore he's chayav. But if before he takes out the second half a fig, a dog ate the first half a fig, or it got burnt, or it got taken away by the cars or something, destroyed, then he's not chayav because that he never took out a whole half a fig. Took out half, then another half. Similarly, if he took out half, put it down, then he picked it up again. Now it's no longer in Rishus Rabim. Now he picked it up, it's no longer in Rishus Rabim. And then he takes out another half a fig and puts it down in Rishus Rabim. He's not chayav. Because if somebody was to ask you, has he taken from Rishus Yochid to Rishus Rabim an entire fig? No. Because there is no longer, the first half is no longer in the Rishus Rabim. So he never actually did an Issad, a Chiyuv D'Oraisa of carrying an entire fig into Rishus Rabim. Next question, very similar. Now, halacha is that if you carry something from Rishus Yochid to Rishus Rabim, you're a chayav. What happens if you don't put it down on the Rishus Rabim, but you put it within 3 tefachim of Rishus Rabim? You're also chayav. Why? Why are you chayav if you put it within 3 tefachim? Very good, because of lavud. The concept that anything which is less than 3 tefachim is considered as if it's closed. So if I carry an apple from my house and I put it down on top of the M62, but I don't put it all the way down, I lift it, let's say, 10 centimeters above the ground, I'm chayav. Lavud dictates that as if it's on the ground. Comes along Rava and says, if I take half a fig and I put it down, I take the next half a fig, and I put it down, not 3 tefachim below the ground, higher than 3 tefachim. So am I chayav normally higher than 3 tefachim? No, because no lavud. But because there's a piece of fig already there, and what I do is I put it within 3 tefachim of the original fig half, therefore I am chayav. Even though it's not within 3 tefachim of the floor, because it's within 3 tefachim of the half a fig which is already there, so therefore I am chayav. Just like if I would put it within 3 tefachim of the floor, I'm chayav. I'm chayav if I put it within 3 tefachim of the piece that is already there. Because then we say lavud between the piece. Let's say the piece already there is 5 centimeters high, the half a fig. And you're putting it, let's say 3 tefachim is 30 centimeters high. So if you put it 30 centimeters high, there's no lavud because it's too high. But because there's half a piece of fig which is 5 centimeters high, so when I put it now 30 centimeters above the ground, it's within 3 tefachim of the half a fig. Since it's within 3 tefachim of the half a fig, I am chayav. Let's see it inside. One by one. Hoitzi chatzi greges, took out half a fig, v'nicho. Because of hoitzi chatzi greges, v'vio derech, they put it over it, chayav. V'u v'mayo loy noch, it never rested. G'in shevio teich shloisho, they put it within 3 tefachim. V'edim mo, v'mo teich shloisho, abonon tzorich hanocha gabe mashu. There's machlekes of Akiva and the Chachamim. We talked about this once. If you've got 2 houses, one is one side of Rishus Rabim, one's another side of Rishus Rabim, and you throw from one house to the next house, Rabbi Akiva says, you're chayav. Why you're chayav? Because you did from Rishus Yochid to Rishus Rabim, from Rishus Rabim to Rishus Yochid. The Chachamim say, no, you're not chayav. Why not chayav? Because it never rested from Rishus Rabim. You threw it. Let's say you live, there's houses, you've got like these big roads in London, one called Oxford Street or something. And you have 2 Oxford Street, let's say it's Rishus Rabim. And let's say you live on one side, Rishus Yochid, and you throw something across Oxford Street onto the other side. Then the halacha is, according to the Chachamim, you're potter. Because it never rested in Rishus Rabim. So you just took it from Rishus Yochid to Rishus Yochid without ever landing in Rishus Rabim. Says Rava, even if when you threw it, it went below 3 tefachim of the Rishus Rabim, you're still potter. Why? Always say lavud. The answer is, it never rested. So therefore, the fact that it's within 3 tefachim doesn't matter. Asks the Gemara, how come Rava say it'll be a chai because of lavud? Rava holds that it has to rest. When you throw something, it has to stop. And until it stops, it's not considered rested. And therefore, if you throw something across a main Rishus Harabim, even though you do it from one Rishus Harabim to another Rishus Harabim, you're potter, because it never rested. If you carry something and you're just moving it along is not like throwing. You're just lifting it and walking along. Walking along, if it gets within 3 tefachim, it's considered rested. You can't compare throwing to carrying. Tonu Rabbanon. Person took out half a thing. He forgot one forgetfulness. Like we said before, he took out an entire fig and one forgetfulness is chai. If it was 2 different forgetfulness, means you remembered in between. Potter is potter. Even in one helam, so let's say, for example, I live and my front door opens up to one Rishus Harabim, and my back door opens up to a different Rishus Harabim, and I take half a fig from my front door into the Rishus Harabim, and I take another half a fig from my back door into another Rishus Harabim. Says Rabbi Yossi, even if I did it all in one go, in one forgetfulness, I am potter. Why am I potter? Because I never carried an entire fig into one property, into one domain. I carried half a fig into there, and half a fig into there. Now the Gemara brings 3 opinions regarding Rabbi Yossi's shitta. That means Rabbi Yossi told us that if you take half into one domain, and half into another domain, you're potter because you never took the entire thing into one domain. Now the Gemara discusses, when we say 2 domains, then obviously we're talking about 2 Rishus Harabim, and there's obviously a division between them. The question is, how big does the division between them need to be in order for it to be considered 2 separate domains, in order that according to Rabbi Yossi should be potter? That's the question. 3 different opinions. I mean, I just gave an example from your front door and your back door. But let's say from your front door, you have 2 Rishus Harabim. You've got in the back, in front of your house, you've got the M62 and the M60. They're both, let's say, adjacent to each other. And you take half a fig to one, half fig to the other. Do you say, well, at the end of the day, it's all one area? Or do you say, no, it's 2 different Rishus Harabim? This is the question the Gemara discusses. 3 opinions. There has to be a Rishus Yochid for which one is chayav chatos for. But if it's only a karmelis in between, if there's only a karmelis, which you said there's a Rishus Harabim in between, that doesn't divide them. Even a karmelis. But if it's just a piece of wood, not. Even a piece of wood. That means you've got 2 Rishus Harabim, and you've got 3 opinions how to divide them. The first opinion says it has to have a Rishus Yochid in between. If there's a Rishus Yochid in between, it's 2 separate areas. The second opinion says no, even if there's only a karmelis in between, it divides them. And the third opinion is even if it's just a block of wood in between, which is a mokim patur, that's enough to divide them, and it's considered as if you carried 2 separate acts of carrying, and therefore you're not chayav. As the Voveletami, that Shabbos is comparable to Gittin. That is discussing a more complicated case, very briefly like this. A man wanted to divorce his wife. The halacha is, to divorce one's wife, you have to give the get into her hand, or into a place that she can be koina. So if a woman owns her own house, and you throw the get into her house, then that is a way of divorcing her, because now the get is in her chotza, and halacha is that a chotza is koina. A chotza is koina. So if you throw the get into one's wife's house or garden, if it belongs to her, then that is one way to divorce a wife. The Gemara there is discussing a case where a woman did not own a chotza. She did not have her own courtyard. So her husband lent her a chotza. He gave her the possession for a short time of his chotza, just to be able to divorce her. He said, the garden, my front garden should be yours. In order that anything should be inside, it should be yours. And then he threw the get into that garden, that way she should be divorced. He threw the get, and it did not land in the garden, but it landed on a block of wood, which was in the garden. So Rava the halacha is, the Gemara says that she's not divorced. Why not? Because we say as follows, he gave her the possession of the garden. He never gave her other areas. A piece of wood, a block of wood in the garden is considered a separate domain, a separate area. And he never said that she can have that area as well. Never said she can have all the property he owns, only the garden. And this piece of wood is not part of the garden. It's a big block of wood. So therefore, like a bench or something, therefore that's not part of the garden, and therefore she's not divorced because the get never landed in her domain where he lent her. He never lent her everything, just that. It says, Rava, Shabbos and Gittin are comparable. Just like by Gittin we say that the block of wood is a separate area. By Shabbos we say as well it's a separate area. And therefore if there's a block of wood between two Rishus Rabim, the halacha is it's considered two separate domains. And according to Rabbi Yosef, if you carry half a fig into one and half a fig into the other, you're part. New topic. The Mishnah says that to carry eye makeup, how much eye makeup do you need to carry to be chayav, to be significant? Says the Mishnah, in order to color one eye. In order to color in one eye. And what's the point of taking makeup to color in one eye? Imagine a woman going in the street with one eye blue and one eye not, or whichever color. Modest women would only color in one eye. As Rashi explains, that they would cover their entire bodies and they would only reveal one eye, and therefore they only had to decorate one eye. So these modest women, it was worthwhile for them to carry enough makeup for one eye. There's a few points.
Why can't we say they're carrying it in case one of the, like let's say, smudges and need to really fix it up? Like ladies carry generally them, even though they've got makeup on already to fix them.
I hear it's a very good question. I never thought of it. It's that we see from other Gemaras as well. They never took something unless they could use it as is. And enough makeup for one eye, and the way it is useless because you can't just put on makeup for one eye. You go, what's it going to do? I hear. The reason this, obviously, they didn't have this issue of smudging all the time. And if they took out makeup, it was in order to make themselves look nice. A woman will not take up enough makeup. If you ask a woman who's going out on a nice evening, and she takes a makeup bag, and she's got in her bag enough makeup just to color in one eye, she'll never do such a thing. Oh, it might happen. No, because you don't do such a thing. It's not significant. It's interesting to point out that even though these women were so modest, that they covered everything, the hijab had nothing on them, because they literally covered everything except for one eye. Nevertheless, that one eye, they would still bother to put makeup on. It's very, very interesting. It's to this sefer, this idea that you see over here, however modest the woman is, she still has to make an effort to look attractive to her husband. And therefore, even though they were completely covered from top to toe, but the one eye that was revealed, they would put makeup on. There's a pasuk in Shiur that says, "Libavtini achisi chalo, libavtini ba'achas be'edayich." Hashem says to Klal Yisrael, "I love you so much. I love you for one of your eyes." The Yerushalmi in Shabbos on this Mishnah tells us that the pasuk there in Shiur is referring to these women, that because they only reveal one eye, that shows such a great level of modesty. That's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves them. I love you, says the pasuk, for one eye, refers to those women that are modest to the extent they only reveal one eye. So you should come. I'm scared of telling you these kinds of Gemaras. We think we'll all have to start wearing the hijab or something. But the Gemara says not exactly. It says the Gemara, basically, if it's for healing, it's for one eye. If it's for decorating, for two eyes. Rashi explains like this. People that lived in this city, what happened was they had to be more modest because in the city there's a lot of men roaming around, and therefore they would only reveal one eye. The villagers, because there wasn't many men around, they would reveal both eyes. So each community had a different level of tznius depending on what the circumstances demanded. For some women, because there was a lot of men around, they would only reveal one eye. For others, they would reveal two eyes, depending if there was a lot of men. And therefore, there's no contradiction. Our Mishnah says one eye is referring to people living in a town. Therefore, they could only reveal one eye. But the Vice, which says two eyes, is referring to people living in a village, which could reveal two eyes. Now we're going to have a list of different items with different small measurements that you have. Shav. Cotton to block up a small hole. Cotton a small hole of wine. The Mefarshim explain like this. Different liquids have different amounts of looseness, right? Wine is much looser than oil and honey. If you were to make a tiny hole in a bottle of wine, wine will still come out. In a tiny bottle of honey or oil, it will not come out because oil is thicker. So the Gemara is saying that when we talk about wax to block up a hole, we don't mean a big hole which is big enough for oil or honey to come out. But even if the hole is so small that it's only good enough for wine, that is enough for wax. That means we're talking about a tiny hole, pinprick, which is big enough for wine to come out. That is good enough. If wax can close it off, then it is big enough. That's enough to carry on Shabbos Chayav.
What about water? For that, you'd be potter?
For that, you'd be potter because people didn't use barrels for water so much. Therefore, the wax was used. Very good point. Water is even less. Water is even a smaller hole. And that's not significant because the block up of a barrel of water was not considered important enough. Very good. Glue to put on top of a wooden board. What would happen is they would have wooden boards and they would cover the whole thing with glue and they would put it in the garden and the birds flying around would look for somewhere to rest and they would land on the wooden board without realizing there was glue there, get stuck to the wooden board, and that's how one would trap birds. So enough glue to put on top of a wooden board, that is a person's chayav. Oh, zefes v'gofes k'dei lasis v'chulu. Tar and clay, pitch, in order to put on a hole. Tonik k'dei lasis neck of cotton, a small hole. And again, the Mephosh explained over here like this. You have a small container to put mercury inside. You make a hole in order to make the mercury come out. You block up the hole because you don't want the mercury to escape. In the blockage of that means you have a hole, an entrance, you block up that completely. Then you pin a tiny hole in order to let the mercury come out bit by bit. And that tiny hole within the opening would get blocked up with pitch. So enough pitch, not enough pitch to cover the whole lid, but enough pitch to close the hole which was made in the covering which they used in the container of mercury. That was enough to be chayav for. As I said, they used to use a very small amount for small things. Chasis. Remember the Shiur of Yehuda Nafesh. Yehuda says in order for a tripod, and the Tanna Kama says in order to make for an oven. It's mashma that tripod is more than a crucible. And all Kaiman of the Shiur of Yehuda Nafesh. We know that Chachamim say more. The Tanna of Yehuda make the little minimidas minone kotam. That Yehuda says a reed has to be big enough for the size of the shoe of a child, which we said earlier is less than the amount that you need to make a hook for a basket. So the Gemara says it's smaller. And it doesn't mean to make a tripod, but to fix a tripod. Sometimes you have a tripod of clay, and one of the legs of the tripod would get a bit broken, and it won't balance so well. So then what you'd have to do is you'd have to fix that little tripod. So that is how much you need, not to make the entire tripod. Here it's got a picture. If you look at the bottom there, there's a tripod, and there one of the legs of the tripod's got a crack. So you need a bit of clay to fix it. That's how much Yehuda says you're chayav. Not for the entire legs, just to fix it. Top of pair of base. The last slide over here, the Bashar says it's a mistake, it should not be read. Top of pair of the base. Todu bottom. A person carries hair. How much hair do you have to take to be chayav? The Gabel boy said tip. They used to use hair to mix the clay, to mix cement. So again, you think about it. When we have a haircut, what do we do with our hair? We throw it in the bin. Even barbers who get a lot of hair don't store it and keep it. In those days, they would recycle it. They would use their hair to make clay. Tit, how much clay? The last is because we said that what they used to do is they would make a opening to put the bellows in the crucible and to that way to pump air inside, and they would put clay around to block up the no air should escape. That's how much you need. Sid kedei losud, in order to line, in order to put on the body. Rashi explains that it is nice for a girl to look red. So they would put lime on the finger, and lime makes the skin rough and red. Not rough, I should say, shiny. And in that way, girls would look nicer. So enough lime to make one finger of a girl red, that is important because it makes it look more beautiful, and therefore it is chayav. But now we're talking a little bit about general lime purposes, not necessarily to do our Mishnah. But the way the Rishonim explain is that they would have hair between their legs, but they were not of the adult age, that means they were not yet 12, there was, let's say, they were only 8 or 9, and they already started maturing in the way their hair would grow. And that was embarrassing for them. In those days, people would have public bathhouses, so it was uncomfortable for them to have such hair there. So what would they do? So then, they would take it off with the line. But those are Shirim, wealthy people, they would take it off with flour. But those they would take it off with something called Shemen Amoy. In English, it's mir or something kind of oil. An oil which has perfume inside it. Rashi Pesachim actually says, I do not know what sidkas is. It's a kind of oil which had a very nice smell. It's olives which haven't grown a third of the full growth, and you squeeze it, the oil that comes out of it is particularly sharp, and it's able to get rid of hair. Like waxing. And pincoin. What is unpincoin? It's olive oil that's not yet a third matured. Why would people use it? Gets rid of hair, and it makes the flesh soft. He had a daughter, Tofla, Eva, and he put this line on every limb by limb, not in one go, because as we mentioned before, putting lime makes the skin hot and red, and he didn't want her to get overheated, Chas Shalom. So he did each part of her body bit by bit. So what happened was people were so desperate to marry her because she looked all red. She looked very nice. So a man offered 400 zuz to marry her. So Bibi made a lot of money by doing this. He had a girl live nearby. He also had a daughter. So he decided to do like a Bibi. He wasn't careful to do limb by limb. He did the entire body of the girl in one go. And she died because she got overheated from all the lime. Omar, Bibi killed my daughter because of the fact I copied him and ended up that my daughter died. He didn't have the sense to listen to him properly and follow him completely to do it correctly, and he killed his own daughter. And he blamed it naturally on someone else. Bibi's family that used to drink beer, therefore the daughters needed to put lime on to get rid of the bad effects of the beer. And that means what happens is drinking beer makes the Rashi explains, or Shem explain, make them have bad skin, black skin, and also drinking beer makes your hair black, Rashi says. So therefore, it makes extra hair. So therefore, Bibi, whose daughters drank beer, he had to go through this process. Our daughters don't drink beer, and therefore they don't need this. Now the Mishnah says another opinion is in the Mishnah it says lime. How much lime do you have to take? We said Tanakama said to make a girl look nice, and we explained it's enough lime for one finger, which is a very small amount. And that was Rabbi Yehuda's shitta. And the next Tana said not kilkul, but the Chemia said they losud underpi. So there are 3 opinions how much lime you have to carry on Shabbos we consider significant. Either for the lime for one finger, that's Tanakama, and then we have 2 more opinions. Rabbi Yehuda says kilkul, and then the Chemia says underpi. And now the Gemara is going to establish what these 2 things are. My kilkul, my underpi. Omar Rab Tzido Bas Tzido. Tzido is the temples, it's over here. Or Bas Tzido is the lower part of the temples. Little picture is temples, if you see over here. Temples over here. And Bas Tzido is lower than the temples. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's enough lime to get rid of the hair on the temples. And according to the Chemia, it's the hair below. Remember the Shiur, Rabbi Yehuda Nofish. It comes that Rabbi Yehuda is more than the Tanakama, because the Tanakama said enough for one finger, and he said for the temples, it came on the Shiur Rabbanon Nofish. It's more zut with Rabbanon, it's less than Chachamim, but Nofish with the Chemia, but it's more than the Chemia. And the Chemia said it's the lower temple, which is less than the higher temples. So again, either it's the line for the finger, or for the temples, or the lower temples. And the Shiur goes that the Chemia is that it's more than the Chemia, which is the lower temples. Then you've got Rabbi Yehuda, the temples, and then the Chachamim, which is the line of the finger. I agree with Rabbi Yehuda. The amount of lime you need to take is for kilkal, is referring to lime which has been dissolved. If it's a lump, then I hold like from the Nechemia. So Rabbi said if it's a lump, like from the Nechemia, if it's dissolved lime, like Rabbi Yehuda. If we talk about the hair on the temple or below, you don't use a lump of lime to get rid of hair on your temple. What do you use for the hair of the temple? What do you use to get rid of it? Dissolve the lime. So obviously, they're not talking about the temple. And differ. It's a kind of barrel which would have two spouts, and they would use lime to block up the spouts that the wine shouldn't leak. Does a person waste his money? Does he destroy his money? If a person would use lime to block up the barrels, then what would happen is the lime would dissolve because of the wine, and eventually the wine would leak, and he would end up without any wine or lime. So nobody would use lime to block up a bottle of wine. Next time you've got a barrel of wine, don't use lime to block it up. Why not? Because the lime gets dissolved through wine. It's markings. They used to use a lime to mark up on a kedika. It's now shnosa you behin. That this big container in the base of Mikdash, which was the size of a hin, which is 12 lug, and it would say adkan lepor. This is the amount you need for a cow. Adkan le'ayil. This is how much you need for a lamb. Adkan le'keresh. This is how much you need for a sheep. Like we said today, in Musaf, they have to have the chosam and the scam for each thing of the kabbalas of Rosh Chodesh. So there would be different markings for the cow, the lamb, and the sheep. So the lime was used for markings, and that's pshat in our Mishnah. So again, it comes out that the argument in our Mishnah is: was it the lime for a finger, or was it lime for the markings? Says the Gemara. The Ibra is saying, "Mayan difa apusa," and difa does not mean. It does not mean for markings either, and difa means apusa means the forehead. The forehead. That means girls, instead of putting lime on the fingers, would put lime on the forehead in order to make themselves look nice. There was once a person who came from the Golem. The Ikra lebava came to Baba. Come and explain to us Ma'aseh Merkava. Mitzvah on Shavuos, you're going to be reading the Haftarah, first day Shavuos, and Ma'aseh Merkava of Yechezkel. And this is a topic which got tremendous kedusha. And the Gemara Chagiga says that a person shouldn't speak about it unless he's speaking to people who are worthy of talking about it. So therefore, one doesn't actually publicly speak about Ma'aseh Merkava. So now, what happened was, they asked him, would you speak about Ma'aseh Merkava? I'll speak to you about it, just like Nechemia spoke to his friends. And a hornet came out of the wall, and bit him on his forehead, and he died. The reason why he died was his own fault, because the fact that he said, I'm ready to speak publicly about Ma'aseh Merkava, was a zilzul in the importance of it, and therefore he deserved to die. Since he deserved to die, therefore the hornet came and stung him and killed him. So therefore we see from that story that Andipa is the forehead. So we've got two explanations of the Maskona. What's the Andifa? Andifa is either markings, or Andifa is the forehead. And there were many uses for lime. And we have a three-way machlokes in our Mishnah, how much lime is one chaya for carrying, either an amount for a finger, or for forehead, or for markings, or for the temples, according to one pshat in the Gemara. And if a person carries that much, he's chayav. If he carries less than that, he's not chayav. But as Shai pointed out, it's still awesome. Some say it's awesome in the Hatorah, and some say it's awesome in the Rabbon. Okay, we got to the Mishnah. I wanted to do actually more, because this week, as I said, there will be a Shiur mitzvah on Erev Shavuos. Now, as I said at the beginning of this year, there's a tremendous, tremendous importance in spending the next few days thinking about how lucky we are that we have the Torah. It cannot be that the only reason why a person feels joy about Shavuos is because he believes he'll get more Gan Eden. It's not only about Gan Eden. This world is a happier place for those of us, for those who've got the Torah. In fact, if you think about it, every single one of us, on some level, is a Novi. If you think about it, because Hashem spoke to every neshama was there. The Chazal say, if Hashem spoke to a person once in his lifetime, then he remains a Novi forever, even if Hashem never spoke to him again. And every one of us, our neshama stood at us, and Hashem heard the actual voice of Hashem. That means every one of us has a neshama that actually heard the it's a tremendous. And you have to celebrate Shavuos. It's even more important than other Yom Tovim. Regarding other Yom Tovim, there's a machlokes if you're allowed to spend the entire day davening and learning, or whether you have to have a meal. But regarding Shavuos, the Gemara says, regarding Shavuos, you cannot spend the entire day learning, even if you wish. You have to, at some stage, have a fancy meal. And you've got to look, you can all afford to get yourselves something very, very exciting for Shavuos. It has to be something special. Each person has to decide what's special for them. But it's a huge Shiur, but a person has to look for something very, very exciting to buy. A person has to go to the shops and see what there is on offer. Any questions on the daf about recycling or anything about what they used to use? Yechiel, I was thinking of you as we're doing the work.
But the letter, we says when you write one letter, you need potter.
Yes.
So I know, but when it comes to the lacha of writing on Shabbos, let's say you write a letter ches, so you'll be potter. But if you take like part of the line out, it comes a resh and a vav. Would that be chayv again, or would that be like the Gemara there?
That's a very, very, very good question. The Gemara will discuss it later. And that's where the Gemara doesn't go quite in detail as you have. That means the Gemara does discuss. For example, certain letters are made out of two letters. So if your intention was only to write the letter ches, you're not chayv, because at the end of the day, it's only one letter. But this is really getting into mishtavur topics. But the truth is, you're not chayv, because in your particular case that you discuss, you're not chayv because you wanted to write the letter ches, and you know it's better to do. Discussing what happens if you do Rosh Tevos. Let's say you write just letter Yud, and the letter Yud stands for Chveis Yid, or Aleph, it stands for Abo. So the letter Aleph, there's a lot of these questions. It's only a shaila with the Yechav Chatos. Either way, it is also, you realize, yeah? What did you say, Shai?
I've got a general question, because on Shabbos, someone by mistake let the chickens out from the small part of the garden and cordoned them off. And when my father was going into the back part, they followed him and started eating. And there's a narrow entrance to get out of that part. And my father realized he had just trapped them by mistake. And the animals that are kept for livestock, what they call sheyesh b'hem nitzotzos or something, you can't trap them further. Yeah?
So what was the question? Can you then get them into the small one? No.
Yeah, but they were anyways there. My father had just trapped them.
Right.
So
Once he's trapped, then he strapped those. What?
Yeah. So he's anyways allowed to just close it.
Yes.
Yeah,
but you're still not allowed to get it into the smaller coop. That means
they automatically, because it's trapping them further.
Right,
the question is, but if you're trapping them further, let's say we've got a garden and someone now walks into the garden, so we've just trapped them somewhat, haven't we?
No.
They can't go as far.
No.
If let's say 200 people walked into the garden, they would barely have a tiny egg.
It's a very nice shaila, but it's not. It's not clear. The Shmuel actually talks about that as well. That every time, if you've got, let's say, as you say, a very nice example, you've got chickens that are 100 foot by 100 foot. So now let's say 100 people come in. So now they've only got 5 foot by 5 foot. Still, one is not chayav for that, because that's not, each person is not any trapping. That's not a chiyuv. That's not a considered trapping. That's not. Very good. Any other questions? Wishi, what are you buying for your children for Yom Tov?
No idea.
You can't buy them whiskey. That's not going to.
It's the wife's department, not mine.
But you have to encourage. You have to say that there's no limit to the budget. Otherwise, what happens is she might get nervous.
Yeah, well, there's never a limit anyway. They always get what they want.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it makes it much more challenging on Yom Tov to find something exciting. End of the day, which dash have they not had? You'll find something, I'm sure. Maybe a piece of time. Okay, I'll text you when it's converting.
Yeah, shkoch, Bye.